Hi, Michael. The question we have for today is a bit long. It says, how can it be that something happens that you do not desire? According to what we know of the non-dual teachings, there could be an apparent contradiction between what the teaching says, that you may not want something to happen and that it happens, or that you may desire something and that doesn't happen, when we know that everything is a projection of the mind. That is, I might not know that unconsciously I want to punish myself as an ego by eating junk food, for example, or rather keep the illusion going or reaffirming this vasana. And yet, on a conscious level, I believe that I want to take care of myself, and I tell myself so.
Okay. When we are dreaming, the dream is our own projection. But in a dream, we don't experience ourselves as the one who is projecting the dream. We experience ourselves as a person within the dream. That person is a part of the projection. So our present state is just a dream, as Bhagavan said. Therefore, the person we now seem to be is itself a part of the projection. So because, though we are the creator, because we identify ourselves as a creature, we don't experience the powers of the creator. Though we are, from moment to moment, we are creating all this, we are experiencing ourselves as if we are a part of our creation. That is why we can't just choose to project whatever we want. When we're dreaming, if we're being chased by a monster, we can't suddenly decide, okay, I want this monster to disappear. We're afraid and we run away because it's not under our control. Because not only is the monster a mental projection, we who are running away from a monster are also a mental projection. We are identifying ourselves with one of our mental projections. That is one way of answering the question. When such is the case, what is it that determines what we project? Okay, our present state is just a dream. Why are we projecting this coronavirus? Obviously, this is an undesirable situation. It's not doing good to anyone. Well, there may be some people who are going to make a profit out of it, but for the majority of us, it's a great impediment to our normal way of life. So we don't want any pandemic like this. But we have projected it. What is it that determines what we project? Sometimes people go through wars, they go through famines, they go through all sorts of experiences, which obviously they don't want, but it's part of the dream that they're experiencing. So what is it that determines what we experience in a dream? Ultimately, the ultimate cause for everything is our will, but not our present. But what we are experiencing is determined by our destiny, our prārabdha. Our prārabdha is the fruit of actions that we did in the past using our will. So, just to take an example, in the past, we may have been very unkind, selfish, even cruel. We may have caused suffering to other people. Those actions have consequences. If we are given to experience the fruits of those actions in this lifetime, we will suffer. It's not because we now want to suffer, but in the past, we wanted to cause suffering to others. And as Bhagavan said, whatever is given to others is given only to oneself. So if we are cruel to someone, if we have caused suffering to someone, that will come back and we'll have to experience it sooner or later. Well, that means if it's selected as part of our prārabdha in some future life, it may have been many, many lives ago that we were very cruel and unkind, but if Bhagavan thinks, if Bhagavan decides that is those are the karmas whose fruits will be most beneficial to us now, he will select those karmas for us to experience now. So all that we experience is our own mental projection. What determines what we project at each moment is our prārabdha, which is the fruits of past actions as selected by Bhagavan for our spiritual development. The person who asked this question makes an assumption, but since this is all a projection of the mind, we should be able to project whatever we want. If we could project whatever we want, none of us, we would be constantly trying to fulfill our desires. But by that, we'd be feeding our desires more and more, and thereby making ourselves more and more miserable, because the stronger our desires, the more they agitate our mind, and the more we're seeking their satisfaction. So the aim of Bhagavan is to free us from desires, not to satisfy our desires. So sometimes giving us difficulties is an effective way of weaning our mind away from our desires. When our efforts to achieve what we want are disappointed many, many times, we slowly begin to look for happiness elsewhere. We know that we're never satisfied by allowing our attention to go outwards. So we begin to, we become willing to search for that happiness within ourselves. So it wouldn't be beneficial for us if we could project whatever we wanted, because ultimately happiness doesn't lie in projection. Happiness lies in turning within and subsiding within. In order to project this world, we have to rise as an ego, identify ourselves as a body, and experience all this. That is a recipe for dissatisfaction. If we want satisfaction, we need to surrender. We need to cease rising as ego. There's no other way. So what we project now is what is most favorable for us for our ultimate salvation, for our ultimate freedom from ego.
Yeah, so exactly. So in a way, it's like saying that character in a movie wants to change script, for example, that was written by previously, and it's like it's impossible. Yes. The character has to play the role in the movie, and it has no power over what is going to happen. Let's say.
Yes, that is. If the actor has acted and he goes in the premiere, he knows what's going to happen because he's acted in it. He wishes that wouldn't happen because he knows his character's going to experience something. So he may be sitting there wishing it wasn't going to be the case, but he cannot change it because it's already the script. It's already been acted, and the film has been made and released. So what we experience now, it is the fruits of our past actions, but we can't change it now. We can't undo what we did in the past.
It's not like people say that and connect with Carl Jung and the more Jungian psychology and so on, that karma could be like unconscious stuff that is brought about unconsciously here in this life, and we call it fate just because we're unaware of it, and there's no way to change it until we make it conscious, so to speak.
Yeah, well, yeah.
That has nothing to do with that. Yeah.
No. Jungian psychologists, their aim is different. Their aim is solving problems within the mind. Bhagavan said the mind itself is a problem. So long as you have a mind, it's a problem. So the only way to solve the problem is to get rid of the mind, to surrender it, to cease rising.
It's still reinforced.
Yeah.
So still reinforced the idea of the outside world and so on. Yeah.
Bhagavan has analyzed the root cause of all our problems far more deeply. And he's given a far deeper solution, a radical solution, and a solution, a perfect solution, a permanent solution.
And in a way, wanting to change what is happening is to admit that what is happening is not the best for a benefit.
Yeah,
It's in a way, it's saying
yeah.
no to Bhagavan in a way.
It's
right?
going against the path of surrender to want to change anything. If we want to be truly happy, as Bhagavan says in that analogy of the passenger traveling in a train, if we carry our luggage on our head, we're going to suffer. If we put the luggage aside, we can travel comfortably and happily. So wanting to change anything is carrying our burden on our head. It's a recipe for misery. If we want to be happy, the only way to be happy is to surrender. To the extent that we surrender, to that extent we will be happy. Surrender means firstly giving up or reducing the strength of our desires and attachments, but ultimately surrender means not rising as ego. When ego doesn't rise, then no desires and attachments exist without ego, because the ego's desires and attachments. When we're asleep, we have no desires or attachments, no likes or dislikes, no hopes or fears. It's only when we rise as ego, we bring all these along with us. And we create problems for ourselves. So not rising as ego, that is the only solution. That is achieved by self-investigation and self-surrender.
But I think, Michael, there is like a belief in the spiritual world, or from spiritual people from many different paths, that when your mind as the mind purifies more and more, your life, your outside life will rearrange in such a way that it shows or is the expression of that purity of the mind, and you will have less problems. Everything will be more peaceful in a way, and the problems will drop away.
That is a very naive assumption. When our mind is purified, when our desires are reduced, that won't change what we're going to experience, but it will change how we experience it. But what causes us to suffer is when we experience something we don't like. So how to avoid suffering? Give up that dislike. So the more our mind is purified, the less we will be affected by whatever may happen. Whether it's seemingly better or seemingly worse, it doesn't matter. For someone who is surrendered, it doesn't matter what happens.
Yeah, it's true. Mm-hmm.
All suffering is caused ultimately by our rising as ego. And when we rise as ego, we bring all our desires and attachments along with us. And the stronger our desires and attachments, the more we suffer. So that's why the path of surrender is the only means to be free. Reducing the strength of our desires and attachments, and thereby subsiding more and more. And that is achieved most effectively by turning our attention within, by self-investigation. Because when we turn our attention within, we are letting go of everything else. So that is true. That's why Bhagavan says in verse 26 of Uludunapadu, Ahande undayin and netum undahum. If ego comes into existence, everything comes into existence. Ahande indrail indru anatum. If ego doesn't exist, everything doesn't exist. Ahande yabamam. Ego itself is everything. Adalal Yadu idu indru nadale overdal yabam en or. Therefore, know that investigating what is this ego is giving up everything. So to the extent that we turn our attention within to investigate who am I, to that extent we are giving up. To that extent we are renouncing. To that extent we are surrendering. So true surrender is only self-investigation.